Hello everyone, welcome to the fourth session of seafood canning technology. In the previous sessions, for understanding of this particular subject, we have divided into three components, which is the concept, the container, and the process. We have described it as a CCP. So, in the previous sessions, we have discussed regarding the basic concept of this technology, and the last session we discussed regarding the container, and in this session, we will be dealing with the process. The canning technology is divided into different processes. It's a highly standardized process, so it has been classified into different technologies. And by following this step-by-step procedures, then only we can achieve a final well-defined product at the end of the process. Each procedures will be having standard operating procedures, which has to be carefully followed so that any defect in any one of this procedure can result in a faulty product or the faulty process, which is going to create problems for the consumer as well as the manufacturer. So, if you consider step by step processes, the first process is always, as any proper seafood or food processing technologies in general, it will be the selection, handling, and preparation of the raw material. Then, particularly in the canning, the enclosing of the raw material in the container is one of the important process. The preparation of the container, it is a very important process. There is a crucial the container closing process, like different sealing processes are there. Then obviously the thermal processing process, the post preservation process, and labeling, storage, etc. So just like any other well-defined food preservation or food processing methodologies, this scanning technology also have a well-defined process. First and foremost important component for any process to start is the availability of the right variety and right quality of raw materials. So, in the case of seafood, a variety of materials are used for processing. In the case of major fishes, like if you see the total canning industry of the world, the major fishes canned are majorly tuna is one of the popular seafood canned product. Then sardines, salmon is also highly preferred for canning. Then there is mackerel, cod is there, anchovies, herrings, etc. So these are some of the popular fish species which are normally used for canning. So according to the variety of the raw material, the preparation procedures is going to vary. So that has to be planned accordingly. Then it will be the pre-processing of the raw material, which is usually salting, either salting, blanching, or pre-cooking, depending on the raw type of the raw material. And then the third process will be filling the container. There is standard procedures for filling the container. Then the exhausting the container to remove the air. Then sealing the container. Either it can be hermetical sealing or double sealing or double seaming or thermal sealing or heat sealing, like depending on the type of the container we are going to use. Then it is going to be washing the container. Then the thermal processing, the major process, which is heating or thermal processing. Then cooling and drying, and finally labeling and storage. So these are eight or nine steps or processes are designed for canning technology or the canning process, so that at the end of this procedure, if each one of this procedure is prepared or is completed according to the standard operating procedures designed for this process, finally a very like a safe canned product or material can be available for the consumer. The first process in the canning technology is selection, handling, and preparation of the raw material. So, this initial step is very important because it is one of the processes where a properly CCP can be applied. We consider the quality perspective of this any technology, any food processing technology. Like any food products, there's a possibility of certain quality issues or damages or hazards. So, which can be rectified using establishing certain CCPs according to the HACCP plan. So, receiving of the raw material or the selection of the raw material is always one of the first CCPs which needs to be implemented in any food processing technique. So, similarly in canning also, the first process is going to be the selection, handling, and the preparation of the raw material. So, why this is important means quality of the canned product is ultimately depending on the quality of the raw material. So, it is already there is a saying that we cannot make a great product from a substandard quality raw material. So, for a good quality product, ultimately, if the process has to result in a good quality product, it always has to be start with a really good quality raw material. So, the selection process is going to be very important. So, quality of the canned product, if we can define, and what are the factors that is going to influence the quality of the canned product? So, all the raw material quality is one of the most important primary parameters. So the influence of a processing parameter is one of the thing. The quality of the raw material is one of the things. So these are the two important factors that is finally going to determine. One is the efficiency of the process or the preservation process, and one is the quality of the raw material. So these two factors are really important. We have already discussed that the quality of the raw material connected to the quality of the final product. So what are the factors that is going to determine the quality of the raw material? The quality of the raw material is mainly determined by selection of good quality raw material. So that is very important. The selection process is also going to determine. So and you need to employ certain standard procedures so that only good quality raw material enters the production process. So that is very important. Selection is going to be very important. Then also after selection, as you know, the seafood is a very highly perishable raw material, highly perishable food product. So the proper handling, transportation, and storage of the raw material is going to be very important. That is also going to influence the quality of the raw material. Then after finally, when you receive through standard procedures, we transport the raw material to the processing unit. Finally, the proper preservation of the raw material is also going to influence the raw material quality. So these are the three important factors that which is going to influence the quality of the raw material, such as selection of good quality raw material, proper handling, transportation and storage of raw material, then proper preservation of raw material. The quality of the raw material, how it is going to influence the quality of the product. Because raw material, what we are talking about here is basically fresh seafood. So fresh seafood is very high in bacterial load. That we all know that seafood is very rich in the nutritional components. Not only in the surface of the seafood, the environment from which the seafood is harvested, those environment is also highly concentrated in bacteria. So high bacterial, so definitely the raw material is going to have high bacterial load. Certain amount of bacterial load is going to be there. So we need to make sure that the higher the quality of the raw material, the lower is going to be the bacterial load. The intensity of bacterial load is going to have a direct influence on the intensity of the process conditions. Why happens is that if the why bacterial load is high, that we requires a long exposure to heat. A higher heat exposure may require if the bacterial load is more, which is in turn going to affect the quality of the final product, because the higher the heat exposure, the nutritional components in the product is going to be compromised. So the initial bacterial load is going to be very important in the case of canning technology. Also, the different kinds of preservation techniques are also used. That is also very important. So, different kinds of preservation techniques we are using for the handling the raw material. When the raw material is received to the production unit, we either salting can be applied, chilling, freezing, cold storages, etc. These are some of the techniques used to preserve the raw material. So, the maintenance of the cold chain is also going to be very important in the case of raw material. For efficient canning premises or the canning unit, so the cold chain maintenance is very important, because mostly we use fresh raw material for canning. So the fresh raw material has to be handled through a properly maintained cold chain facility from point one to the final point. So that is very important. The time and temperature combination has to be maintained. So exercising a steady market of quality raw material within reasonable pricing, that is also very important. The successful running of a canning unit, we need to ensure a steady market of quality raw material, and then within reasonable pricing. So reasonably priced raw material of good quality needs to be maintained thoroughly. In handling the raw material, when the raw material is finally received, a proper quality raw material has been procured, it is properly handled and properly preserved. Then grading is one of the stage in which is very important. The size grading is very important in the case of canning, because the fish or seafood that we are going to fill in containers needs to be of uniform size. Then only we can assure a uniform process conditions, uniform pricing, uniform consumer acceptance, etc. needs to be maintained. When the consumer opens the container, all the units or all the pieces has to be of uniform size and appearance. So for that, the size grading of whatever fishes are available is very important. So size grading is important because it affects the container. What is the size of the container that we are using, and shape of the container, the filling, etc. Usually, the filling is generally done through automated machineries. Filling machineries to function properly, the size of the raw material should be of uniform. So size grading is of very important. The most common kind of size grader that we use is of that roller type graders, especially the sizing the smaller fishes like sardine, mackerel, cod, etc. The roller type of size grades are most commonly used. After grading the fishes, the proper washing of the fish is very important. One of the part of preserving and cleaning processes. According to the packaging styles, it has to be properly cleaned. The cleaning processes is one of the important step, because it actually plays an important role in reducing the bacterial load. So, and other debris and other quality hazards can be significantly reduced by properly washing the raw material. So, different kinds of perforated drum washing machines are used for washing the raw material. After washing the raw material, next step is going to be cutting or dressing the fish. So preparing the fish according to the size of the container or according to the size or style of packaging that we are going to use. So and depending on the fish variety also the type of cutting and cleaning procedures will vary. So in the case of large fishes like tuna, bleeding is one of the important process in order to prevent the blood clots inside the meat and removal of dark meat. That is also one of the process when you are canning tuna, because the meat color, the blood clot needs to be prevented because it will affect the appearance of the meat, and it will provide dark patches throughout the meat, which is not preferred by the consumers. So bleeding of the tuna is very important. In the case of small fishes like like sardines etc., knobbing is one of the process. Knobbing is basically removing head and gut etc. in a single process, single operation. There are particularly designed knobbing machines are there, which in a single operation will remove the head, gut etc. of the fishes like sardines, mackerel etc. in a single operation. So knobbing is one of the processes that we use for smaller fishes. In the case of shrimp, peeling is practiced because shrimps are usually canned without shells. So the shell has to be removed. The shell removing process of shrimps are generally called as peeling. This peeling either through manual peeling or machine based peeling has to be done. And also in the case of clam, mussels, etc., the shucking has to be done. Shucking is basically the removal of the shell, process of extracting the clam meat from the shell. So these are according to the raw material. These kind of dressing or cutting of the raw material is done according to the container size, type of raw material, type of container, size and shape of the container, etc. Depends for this operation. After cleaning and cutting the fishes, the next the process is going to be salting, blanching, or pre-cooking. So these are basically considered as the pre-processing steps in the case of canning. So some fishes like salmon, etc., packed as raw. So such fishes, this kind of pre-processing is not required. But some freshwater fishes like katla, carp, etc., has to be flash fried before packing. So frying is also sometimes conducted as a pre-processing step. Firmness of the flesh in the case of freshwater fishes are low compared to saltwater fishes. So when we are canning freshwater fishes, generally the fish pieces are flash fried. So that is one of the process sometimes employed. But in the case of, especially in the case of large fishes like tuna, the pre-cooking procedure is done. It is pre-cooked because the pre-cooking has certain advantages, like like it will remove the moisture, reduce the bacterial load, provide a good color to the meat, provide a preferable texture to the meat, etc. So these are some of the advantages are there. So especially in the case of large fishes like tuna, the pre-cooking will facilitate the removal of dark meat as well. So pre-cooking is one of the procedure involved. But in the case of sardine, generally blanching is involved. The blanching can be done two ways. One is cold blanching is done, and then hot blanching is done. So usually it is packed, and then after the packing, pre-cooked and then decanted, and again after blanching, the liquid can be decanted. Again, fresh brine can be filled in. So cold blanching is basically in 6% brine without any heating. Hot blanching it is also in 6% brine, but in the case of 5 to 10 minutes boiling in the brine for a steam blanch, or steam blanching can be done. So either it can be hot blanching, either boiling or by steaming by addition of 6% brine. Either it can be cold blanching where 6% brine is added and treated to 15 to 20 minutes without any boiling. So these are the types of blanching methods available. The case of pre-cooking tuna, pre-cooking is done generally at a temperature of around 15 degrees Celsius to 15 to 20 minutes. So it is like under steam or without steam can be done. Usually under steam only it is done. The temperature is around 100 to 115 degrees Celsius, and it is like usually done in open retorts without applying the pressure. The same retorts that we use, or there can be pre-cooking retorts can be employed, or the same retort that we are going to can the product can be employed for pre-cooking of larger fishes, applying a temperature around 100 to 115 degrees Celsius for 15 to 20 minutes without applying application of the pressure. So, what are these advantages of blanching or pre-cooking? The blanching or pre-cooking has the following advantages, such as it decreases the initial bacterial load. We have already discussed that which is going to affect the process lethality, and it also improves the texture. And the improvement in the texture will additionally help easy handling and filling of the raw material. It inactivates the enzyme action since it is a heat process. It also inactivates the enzymes. Further enzymatic spoilage or enzymatic hydrolysis can be prevented. It also improves color of the product. A preferable color can be imparted on the raw material by blanching or pre-cooking. And also it expels gases from the tissue. So the pre-cooking or the blanching processes basically expel gases from the tissue, which is going to result in a better vacuum of the product. Also it imparts a characteristic flavor that is also there, and it also the preheat the food before thermal processing, because it is basically a preheating process employed before thermal processing. So when the raw material reaches the thermal processing stage, it is already heated, which is going to help the thermal processing process, because the product is already heated. So it can easily reach to the reference temperature on a faster rate compared to placing a cold product for thermal processing. So these are the basically advantages of the blanching or pre-cooking processes. And also this cooking process release around 15 to 30% of water. So additional moisture is also removed. If bleaching is not done or pre-cooking is done, what happens is that during the actual thermal processing stage, water may be released into the container, and what happens is additional water when it is released, if it is filled with oil, it can create a water oil emulsion in oil packs. It can dilute the sauce if it is the packing material or the filling material is a tomato sauce or something. Additionally, released moisture or water can dilute the tomato sauce as well. So these are some of the ill effects that if proper blanching or pre-cooking is not done. So basically, blanching and pre-cooking will alleviate this kind of issues. But there is also some disadvantages like leaching of salt soluble and heat sensitive nutrients. Whenever heat is applied, that is going to happen. Under blanching or over blanching may affect the product quality. So it needs to be properly standardized. The blanching process or the pre-cooking process needs to be properly standardized, because under blanching, under pre-cooking, or over blanching or over pre-cooking will eventually result in a compromised quality end product. After the pre-processing activities, the third stage is going to be filling the container. The proper filling of the container is very important. So initially it was manually filled, but now the filling machines are there. Pre-weighed the raw material can be filled inside the container using automated machines are there. Can filling machines are there. So the main important point is that the can neck should be free from the solid pack or liquid medium after filling. The neck of the container needs to be free from the solid particles of liquid medium. And also another important factor is the proper head space should be maintained. The filling weight should be matching the aggregate gross and net weight and drained weight of the container. The quantity that is filled is very important. The gross weight, net weight, and drained weight has to be properly matching. So whatever gross weight, net weight, or drained weight which is going to be displayed on the container label at the final stage, so it should match. Actually, it is going to be filled within the container. So it has to be planned accordingly or standardized accordingly. During the can filling stage, solid material is generally called as solid pack, and if it is liquid material, it's called liquid pack. So generally, in the container, first a solid material or fish, shrimp or mussel, whatever it is, first the solid particles will be added, then the liquid particle will be added. So the purpose of liquid particle is filling up the space and to create a uniform heating rate. Generally, it is the ratio is going to be 80 to 90% solid and 20 to 10% in liquid part. So that is the general ratio that is followed for while filling the contents into the container. Filling can be either manual or mechanical, and there is also different kinds of weight needs to be maintained. Like gross weight, which is the total weight, is equal to the container plus food. That is what we call as gross weight. And net weight, which means the gross weight minus the container weight, that is the product weight. Then there is called drained weight, where net weight minus liquid weight. So these are the different kinds of weight terminologies that we use while filling: gross weight, net weight, and drained weight. So headspace is one of the important factor in the case of filling a container for canning. So there are two types of headspaces, which is known as gross headspace and net headspace. So gross headspace is calculated by using a formula like net headspace plus countersink plus tin plate thickness. This is the formula that we use for measuring the gross headspace. And net headspace, we use a formula like gross headspace minus countersink plus tin plate thickness added together. So these are the two kinds of parameters that we use to measure the headspace. One is gross headspace and another one is net headspace. There are different gadgets are also available, different spatulas are also available to properly measure the headspace of the container. So according to the container, the headspace that we are going to provide is going to vary. So in the case of jams and jellies, in the case of glass jars, in the case of jams and jellies, 1/4 of the inch or 0.635 centimeter or 6.35 mm is generally provided as headspace. In the case of fruits and tomatoes, it is half inch or 1.27 centimeter or 12.7 mm of headspace is provided. In the case of meat, poultry, and fish or other low acid fishes, properly 1 by 4th inch or 2.54 centimeter to 6.35 mm headspace is provided. So, then general manner you can see that in the case of seafood, is a headspace of up to 6 to 9 mm can be generally provided. And the case of metal cans, especially this kind of 6 to 9 mm of headspace is generally preferred. So, what is the use of this headspace? Why headspace needs to be provided? So, what happened? The headspace has a very important relationship with what is happening actually inside the container when the cooking process is applied. So, what happening is that there is an increase in internal pressure of the container because of whenever heat is applied, we know that expansion of the internal contents, whatever internal contents are that they are going to expand, and also increase in water vapor pressure, expansion of other gases if any. So, these are the reasons why there is an increase in internal pressure. So this internal pressure is going to increase the significance of the headspace, because if no headspace is not present, this pressure is balanced by bulging of the cannon. This kind of internal pressure needs to be balanced by bulging of the cannons. But to cannons to properly bulge, there should be proper headspace needs to be there. So this is where the headspace comes in play, because the headspace is provided to accommodate this expansion of the internal contents, so that only a normal pressure or nominal pressure is exerted towards the cannon, so that the cannons can properly bulge and counteract that internal pressure. So headspace is basically the space provided for accommodating the expansion of contents and to contain the increasing internal pressure. That is the purpose of the headspace. Headspace also influence the efficiency of exhaustion, because exhaustion, proper exhaustion, there needs to be proper headspace need to be there. So if what happens if only little headspace is provided? So if it is only little headspace is provided, there is a chance of bulging of the container, faulty process parameters, because the counter pressure can alter the heat conductivity. So proper headspace need to be there. And also, if you provide too much headspace, what happens is less efficient exhausting can be happen, and also can damage, like paneling or something like that. Damage to the container can happen due to the external pressure.
Thank you.